I'm Lynda Katz Wilner, and my company is Successfully Speaking. Successfully Speaking helps individuals from diverse backgrounds achieve excellence in communication. And what I mean by all aspects of communication would be, I work with people in public speaking, presentation skills. I do a lot of work on foreign accent modification, helping people who speak English as a second language, help them not eliminate their accent, but be more effective communicators. That's one of my prime specialties. I also work with helping people reduce regional dialects. And as Michelle already heard, there was a little bit of New York in my speech, but 30 years ago, there was a lot of New York in my speech, and so I was my first client. And so I also work with helping people who have voice issues. They feel they don't project their voice well, or they don't have the executive presence. They don't feel that when they're speaking, they're taken seriously, especially women. That's more of an issue for women. I am also a speech and language pathologist, so if any of you have had experience with that or know about that, I work with communication disorders, anything from articulation, language issues, swallowing issues, stuttering issues, and all aspects of and voice problems as well. But today we're going to talk about networking. And again, I do work with people on just fine-tuning their skills for networking. And like I said, a lot of you already have fine-tuned the skills, but maybe I can show you one more thing that will make it better for you, something else to think about, because we don't always think about all the aspects of networking. Now, I'm assuming when I ask how do you feel about networking, most people in this room feel positively about it because you're joining this group. So there may be a positive feeling when you know you're going to a networking meeting. But there are some of you, especially if it's the beginning of a meeting, and I hope you can see this, I know this isn't high enough. There are some of you who may cringe at the idea. I know I'm supposed to do this, but I'm very nervous about it. I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm coming across. I don't know how to deal with giving people business cards or selling myself. And so there are many areas that we can fine-tune so that we come across in a more polished and a more comfortable way. What do we consider with networking? I mean, why is everybody networking here today? What's that?
For relationships.
For relationships, absolutely. You have to know why you're networking. We're going to talk about the different reasons for that, and we have to talk about what to consider in networking. Does it mean just going to the restaurant and finding the restaurant and going in? Does it mean just wearing the right thing? There are many things to think about. We need to think about some of the accessories. And what I mean by that, not jewelry necessarily, although that could have a positive or negative impact, the name tags, the business cards, those are important accessories. The nonverbal, which I feel I can bring because of my background as a speech and language pathologist, I work a lot in these areas. The handshake and eye contact. If you remember anything today, the most important thing in making that first impression is your handshake and your eye contact. And I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of both positive and negative features with this. Your posture is very important, your gestures, and your facial expression. And I'm going to go into each of these in a little more depth. It's a lot to think about. Vocally, what are you doing? How's your voice quality? Is it pleasing to listen to, or is it a real shrill voice that people can't stand listening to it? Or a very low voice, it sounds like this, and I sound very tense. What are you communicating with your voice? What word fillers do you use? Do you speak fluently, or is it how is your voice coming across? And uptalk. How many people here know what uptalk is? Okay, we'll get into that. But that's a very common feature of communication, particularly for women. So the goals in your networking might be that you're doing it for business, which I'm assuming everybody here is doing it for that reason. It may be you're new to a community, and of course you're just also looking to have friends. It may be your goal is, I need 5 contacts today. And if that is your goal, you have to think about how are you going about it. Is it the right way, or is it too pushy? Now, the interesting thing is when you're in a networking meeting, people may all tend to be pushy, that's all their goals. But there's a finesse in how you're going to approach that. And of course, you're looking for job opportunities, or new clients, or new business. So there are strategies, and if you're new to an organization, one strategy is arrive early. It's a lot easier to talk to people. And again, because this is a group already, many of you know each other. But if you're new to the group, it's easier to arrive early than to walk People are more open to talking with each other. Volunteer. If you're at that front desk, and Sean has an opportunity to meet every single person walking into this room, that's a great way to network. And it's an easier way to network, although there are other obligations and responsibilities with that. It's really important to assume, and I think I'm preaching to the choir here, that everybody is important. You may not feel that in your head, but approach it that way. Everybody's important and has something to give you, or you could give them, and you can have that interchange. They may not be the person you need to speak to for 30 minutes, but have that in your mind, that everybody does have something positive to give you. And networking is not worth it if you don't follow up. So far, I don't think I've told you anything that you don't already know. So let's see if we can focus on some other things. Name tags. Is everybody wearing a name tag? Almost everybody has one on here? Okay. Where does the name tag go? Left or right? Or is there a rule for that? Left. Left? And some people say right. Okay. What's the rationale for it being left, do you think?
When you shake your right hand, their eye contact.
Well, actually, when you shake with your right hand, the eye contact goes, just shake my hand, Michelle. You're shaking my hand, you're looking to my right. But many people put it on the left. And then many companies, for their employees, will always wear it on the left. I'm not sure I know the rationale for that, but many people put it on their left because they're right-handed. It's easier to put it on the left side than it is the right side. Or men may have a pocket if they're just wearing a shirt and they can put it right on the side. But ideally, you want it on the right side.
Oh.
The right side. The right side, so you shake hands and you see, so Michelle, yours. See, these are good name tags. You can switch it right away. But that's just a good strategy for networking. Kim's looking at me like she knows this, right? Because you raise your hand for the right. Okay. Another big challenge, and as we get older, it gets bigger and bigger, is how to remember names. That to me is the biggest challenge that I have, and I personally have that. I've had it my whole life. And that's why if you're not wearing name tags, you're not even giving me that one strategy. Sure, you're giving business cards, but you want to think of a way to remember somebody's name. It's funny, Renee, we met, but just recently I met somebody at the gym whose name, we never shared names at the gym, but I saw it at the Giant. And we shared names. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not in a work mode, I'm not really thinking about this. How will I remember her name? And it was Renee. So I thought about the fact, okay, we're in spin class together, so ride away, or run away, or something like that, because she's very athletic in this class. Hopefully, I will never forget her name now when I see her in the gym, when I'm in a different framework. So we need to think of ways to remember it. You can repeat it right away, you can incorporate it into the conversation. The more you do it, it sticks with you. You can use some strategy like I talked about. And also when you're talking to somebody, maybe give them a strategy for remembering your name, especially if you have a difficult name. So think about that. I knew a doctor, and her name was Dr. Rixie, and she just always said, it's Dr. Rixie, it rhymes with Dixie. Hopefully, I'm the type of person who would then go up to her and say, hi, Dr. Dixie. It may confuse some people, but ideally, give them something to remember. So I found this cute little video. It's quick. I did not produce this, but it was just a quick way to help you remember different things. And I'm just going to run this right now.
There you are. So how many times do I have to scream your name?
Actually, it's
Yeah. And you come straight. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And if you ask questions, it becomes meaningful. Not always appropriate, but it might become meaningful, so you'll remember it. Putting the image to a name, like I spoke about the cyclist. Here's the Shirley Temple, I hope you remember that. And then again, tie in, for those of you who can't see this, tie in with something you know about them. So Matt, the scientist, may sound like mad scientist. Sometimes it can backfire when you do this, but these are just some ideas. And then again, using it in the conversation. The more you use it, the more you're going to remember it. And sometimes sometimes you forget the name, so use your friend or family member, I'm sure you've all done this, to let them introduce themselves, and then you get the person's name that way. Okay. Business cards. When should you distribute business cards, and how should you distribute business cards? Should you walk into a meeting and just walk up to conversations and hand out your card?
No.
Okay. You want to have a meaningful connection really before you give a business card. I was at a meeting once, and I was talking to somebody, and somebody came up and handed all of us in that conversation her business card. I have no idea, and you've seen this, I'm sure everybody has seen this. You have no idea who the person is, what their connection, and if you might ever need to do business with them. But it also showed that they weren't reading what was going on. So you need to make sure you know what's going on before you pass a business card over. You want to make sure you've had a connection and then give the business card. In some cultures, you have to be even more careful. You should look at that business card and not just stow it away in your pocket, because a business card is something very personal. So think about when you're passing them out and how appropriate. Now, if you're at a meeting like this and everybody says, let's just pass our business cards around the table, that's different. But you can't just run up to somebody and say, here's my card. Well, Mike doesn't want my card. Mike wants to know who I am and if he might even want my card. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, the strategies, you probably know this, make notation on those cards so you can follow up appropriately. Handshakes. That is the biggest way in business, in job interviews, or anything else that you send out the biggest message about yourself. And women have to be particularly careful about this, and people from other cultures have to be careful about this because there are different ways of doing handshakes. I want to show you a quick sample of a few of the handshakes that we come across every day and how we want to approach it.
Hello, I'm Lynda Katz Wilner, founder and director of Successfully Speaking. Have you ever thought about your handshake? The handshake establishes a first impression. Here are some examples of handshakes and what they might convey. For a firm and confident handshake, the hands meet web to web with equal pressure from both parties. If you offer a limp hand, hands with a dead fish.
You've had those handshakes,
It is
right?
neither necessary nor appropriate to be a low pressure, which appears to be overly. If you just offer your fingertips, you may come across as dainty and vulnerable. Just remember, the firm and confident handshake will make a professional and confident first and lasting impression. Of course, if you are a hugger, reserve that for people you know well. For more information about Successfully Speaking and the services we offer.
So handshakes are so important, and the one thing I don't say here but holds true is the handshake should be the same whether it's a man or a woman. Or when you're shaking hands, it should be web to web. You have to think about the person. I know somebody well who when he shakes your hand, especially with a male, but also with me, it's such a strong handshake. He's coming across in such a heavy way that my impression is almost negative. Like, that's just not appropriate. Why are you trying to show that power? What's the point of that? So it does send a big message as to who we are, how we feel about ourselves, and how we feel about other people. The body language. Our posture is really important, especially when you're at a networking event. How you're standing may let people know whether they should come up to you or not, or if they should feel sorry for you because you're standing there and you just feel so uncomfortable you don't know what to do. That's going to send out messages before you make the eye contact, before you shake hands. Your posture should reflect confidence and authority. You want to be based on both feet. Very often, especially women, may stand with one leg over the other, like Stacy was mentioning, they may be tilting their body. All of that is more coy, it's not as powerful. And you want to stand your ground, literally, so you look more powerful. The other things you want to think about is relaxing your shoulders, because if I'm standing like this, I look pretty nervous as I'm talking. And the hips squared with the shoulder, and what I mean by that is if I'm standing like this, when I'm talking to Renee, I am directly facing her and my feet are facing her and I'm very well connected. If I'm talking like this, I'm more connected to somebody over here and partially connected to Renee. So think about squaring off your body And you can't do that with everybody, but that's a way to really show the connection. Along those lines, watch the feet of people. If feet are facing each other, they're connected in that dyad, and it may not be appropriate for you to walk into that group. The gestures should support the message. Many of us may say, oh, it's my culture and I just use my hands so much, but that becomes very distracting. You want to make sure you're not fidgeting with your hair. You're not turning your ring around the whole time you're talking. You're not fixing your tie or whatever it might be. Try to keep your hands by your sides and use them appropriately. Crossing the arms traditionally has always meant that you're closed off. It may actually mean that you're cold in the room, but the way people are reading you is that you're closing them off. Clasping or clenching your hands, it's hard to have something in each hand here, but makes you appear that you're very nervous or wringing your hands. And your hands in your pocket, especially men, they say, well, that's just a very comfortable stance. I rarely put pockets on my clothes, so I can't even do it. They feel it's a more comfortable stance, but it doesn't allow you to engage as much, particularly with public speaking, but even with networking. And the cardinal rule, never talk with your hands over your mouth like this. It looks like you're not sure of what you're going to say, and some research shows that when somebody's doing this, maybe they're lying. Maybe they're not telling the truth. So keep your hands away from your face so you can be expressive and show the facial expressions. Which leads us to that. It's good to smile, but not always. So if you're at a networking event and you want to smile all the time and come across as the friendly person, and somebody's telling you about something horrible that happened in their family, if you keep that smile, you've lost that connection. So again, your smile or facial expression should be consistent. Just like we read body language and we try to match it, we should do the same with facial expressions. Eye contact. Now, how much is good eye contact? Any thoughts about this? How long should you maintain eye contact when you're meeting somebody? Did you ever think about that? Anybody want to throw out a number? It's not minutes, we're talking seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds? 10 seconds? Actually, there's something on a listserv that I'm part of, a LinkedIn group, where somebody argued about this article that spoke about minutes, seconds, and they said, you can't count it. Well, there's something called too much eye contact, and there's something else called too little. And I'm sure you've spoken to somebody who is looking at you so long that you get to a point and say, would you please look away? You know, I'm feeling self-conscious, you're keeping such intense eye contact, I need some space. Remember that. So just having eye contact isn't necessarily the most important way to approach it. It does convey honesty and confidence and interest. It helps you pay attention to the listener's reactions to you. So if I'm making eye contact and I'm looking here at Susan and Susan's looking over there, she's not interested in what I'm saying. And I should read that and say, all right, it's time to move on to somebody else. Hold eye contact for 3 to 6 seconds, and then look away, and then come back. But if you're standing there the whole time maintaining eye contact, it gets very uncomfortable. If you're talking in a group of 3 people, and you're networking, and you're trying to maintain eye contact with each person, you don't want to go from one to the other real quickly, and basically what's happening is, I never made eye contact with anybody. I'm just darting back and forth. So you want to look at the person, and then you can look away for a minute. When you start talking again, look back. But that intense stare becomes so uncomfortable. Again, avoid searching the room when you're doing that. So here's a quick look at some eye contact, so you can see it close up.
Hello, I'm Lynda Katz Wilner, founder and director of Successfully Speaking, and one of the co-founders of ESL Goals. I'd like to talk about eye contact. Eye contact is one of the critical components of nonverbal communication, and it creates a powerful connection between the speaker and the listener. In American culture, eye contact is
Yes, culture is
essential
important
to
here.
convey honesty, sincerity, and confidence. However, this is not necessarily the case in other cultures, where avoiding eye contact might be a sign of respect. Eye contact may reveal more than you realize. Too much eye contact results in staring, which may be interpreted Rhythmic and constant, too little eye contact, or looking away, may be seen as lacking confidence or honesty. Fluttering or blinking eyes may appear to convey nervousness. When the chin is down and one looks upward, we often interpret this as submissive. And when the chin is up, with the eyes looking downward, it is often seen as dominant. When speaking to more than one person, move your eyes slowly to different listeners. If you are darting your eyes too quickly, eye contact is made with no one at all. As a rule of thumb, maintain eye contact for 4 to 6 seconds. You should be looking at the listener whenever you are talking. Remember, a smile shows up in
I change the eyes. So the smile certainly is helpful. Now, Stacy, we started about 5 minutes late. How much time do I have left?
5 to 1.
5 to, oh, that's right. All right, how to approach somebody at a networking event. I'm sure this happens here. I was walking around when people came in, and sometimes I'd see 2 people together. And the question is, do I go over there? How do I know if I should go over there? We're at a networking event. Don't we want to meet a lot of different people? Maybe I can rescue somebody. There are many things that, how would I know that? A lot of it is making observations. Clearly, somebody standing alone is the easiest person to talk to. When Renee came in here, she was here early, but I saw her sitting alone at the table. Unless there's something really wrong with me, if I come over, she's probably not going to shoo me away. So again, look for somebody who may not know other people in the group, and that's an easier way to start. Of course, again, the smile and the eye contact is important. If somebody frowns back, I wouldn't walk over there. And small talk. We don't have time here to talk about small talk, but there are many strategies on what you can actually talk about when you're in this type of setting, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody afterwards about this. When to join that group. So observe the body language. All right, in this group here, if you can see the picture, would you join this dyad?
No.
Okay, what are you seeing that's telling you not to join them? They're facing each other, they're engaged, leaning forward. Like it may be private. So if I walk up, hi, I'm Lynda Wilner, here's my card, that was totally the inappropriate way to network there. So also, if you join a group, listen before talking. You wouldn't walk up to a group and say, hi, I'm Lynda Wilner, my company is Successfully Speaking, and they say, wait a minute, we're talking about something totally different. They're not going to say that to me, but obviously I invaded their space and their conversation. What about moving on? People say that's sometimes the toughest thing. I'm talking to somebody, what do I do now? I want to meet other people, and they just seem to only want to talk to me. Well, of course, you can mention that you want to meet other people. That's the point of the event. Introduce them to somebody else who you think would make a great connection. That's a great way to move on. Or just say you need more food, or a drink, or a restroom, or a phone call, or something like that. Now, they may come with you, but those are some strategies you can use. And then explain the next step. I mean, we're all here to network. So the next step is, I love your card, and why don't we get together for coffee when we have more time to talk about your business and what I can do for you, or whatever that might be. And shake hands and leave. And hopefully that should be smooth. I know, Joni, we were talking in the beginning, and then I said, okay, it's great that I met you, but I really want to meet other people in the room, and hopefully you weren't offended by that, but we're mutually here to meet different people. So here's a nice acronym that can help you remember some of the strategies that we're talking about for any type of interpersonal communication. And the acronym is SOFTEN. The S is a reminder to smile at people. The O, keep an open posture instead of standing like this. The F, a forward lean, like you saw with that woman in the picture, is going to just show that you're much more engaged as you lean towards somebody, as opposed to if Susan said something and I stood like this, or even just like this. That forward lean connects you a little more to the person. Touch. Okay, that's the handshake, of course. Use a warm and firm handshake, but also be aware that there are going to be cultural differences between men and women, and that should not happen in the United States, and between other cultures. So many other cultures I have found when they shake my hand, because I work with a lot of international executives and people who are doctors and nurses, they may shake my hand, especially if they're a man, and they take my fingertips. That's not what you want. You want to have the appropriate touch. On the other hand, somebody, if you're touching them, like if I'm talking to somebody and I decide to say something in conversation, I put my hand on your arm, that may be appropriate with some people. And with other people, especially from other cultures, that may be a problem. So observe what's going on. I was once in a hospital, when my mother was in the hospital, and the Hispanic nurse, who was wonderful, saw me coming in, and as I'm walking down the hall. And let me mention, I do a lot of work with helping communication skills in healthcare with doctors and nurses, especially when they're international. And this nurse came up to me and she slapped me on the thigh and she said, "Your mom is going to be fine." And I thought, oh my goodness, I have a lot of cultural sensitivity and awareness because of what I do. But why did she slap my thigh? But I knew she was Hispanic, and that was totally appropriate in her culture. Now she needs to learn, if she's going to work in the United States, what's appropriate. But the touch is something very important. We all have different degrees of personal space. So if somebody backs off, watch that. So if they're backing off when you're talking to them, and then you get closer and they back up, and you keep getting closer and they back up, you don't want to dance around the room like that. You have to be conscious and mindful of how other people are feeling when you're communicating with them. The E is for eyes. Of course, have eye contact. And the N, which I'm going to talk about now, is just the nod. By using gestures, and women tend to do this even more than men, but using gestures or nods, it's encouraging the person, your conversational partner, to continue speaking with you. So that brings us to active listening. What is active listening? When you're actively listening, you're letting that person know you're listening. This is a gender-related thing as well. I mean, how many women might say to a male, "I was just telling you something, aren't you listening to me?" And their response is, "Yes." And the other response would be, "Well, how do I know you're listening to me? You haven't said anything, you haven't looked up, you haven't nodded your head, you haven't done anything." Without pointing fingers, that's more of a male communication pattern. Women are very different. So it's important for men to know that pattern. So when they speak to women, they know how to adjust. And it's important for women to know that pattern so they don't get offended if somebody is not doing that. Ideally, you want to acknowledge what somebody is saying. You might restate or paraphrase what they're talking about, respond appropriately, and save that information for later use. So if somebody is telling me they're working with entrepreneurs, and we talked about my business, the business my son is in, remember that. So when Michelle calls me, it would be really appropriate not just to say, "I heard you talk, can we talk about my business?" She needs to remember what we spoke about so it's relevant, and I'll speak to her further about that. As far as responding appropriately, make sure if they're talking about something, you don't just change the topic to talk about yourself. I mean, obviously the best way of networking is listening to somebody else, seeing what they have. And if they're doing the same thing, they're asking you anyway what you have, and that would be the best way to communicate. Overall, be yourself, be authentic, and be personal. And then you're conveying a very consistent image. Hopefully you feel good enough about yourself that you can do that. So now we get to the part, how do you sound? And this is something I like to think that I can add a lot of information to because as a speech and language pathologist, I have worked a lot with voice. Uptalk, some of you said you know what uptalk is. Uptalk would be, and they used to call it like the Valley Girl talk, and letting your voice go up at the end, and it is extremely popular now with a lot of younger women and older women as well. And I'm learning it's also common with a lot of business professionals who do consulting work because it means that I'm questioning what I'm talking about. So if I say, "My name is Lynda Wilner and my company is Successfully Speaking," am I sure? Does it sound like I'm confident? But if I said, "Hello, my name is Lynda Wilner and my company is Successfully Speaking," it comes across very differently. Think about when we went around the room, how you introduced yourself. That's a great way you can practice it. Your voice goes down as a statement, not as a question. Now, if you're listing things, "My name is Lynda Wilner and my company is Successfully Speaking." But come down, anchor your voice. You're going to sound much more confident when you do that.